or good afternoon. This is Steve Mann from Build It Green. This is a short webinar on our new Energy Upgrade California Test Measurements Form. This is a replacement for the CAS Measurements Form that's been used in the program up till now. This recording is early October. So I'm just going to give a quick walkthrough on that just to let you know what we need to do in order to successfully submit a job using that form. You can find that form at the builditgreenutility.org website. You can see I've already navigated to that website. Just click the resources page and you want to get down to the document library and you'll see a list of documents. There's a bunch of stuff here. You should actually look at all of this stuff. It's all good stuff. And then you want to go to the EUC Test Measurements Form, left click on that, and then you can right click on this and do Save Link As, and it will download it to your desktop or to wherever you like. I've already done that, so I'm not going to actually download it, but I just wanted to show you that procedure. Once you get the form and you open up the form, if I can get it to switch here. There we go. Okay, that's what it looks like. Similar layout to the CAS Measurements Form. It's a fillable PDF form that you can save. And we'd like you to go ahead and fill this out completely and submit it with every job, both for the test inside and the test outside. So I'm just going to walk you through the fields and hopefully clear up any confusions you might have or questions you might have. At the very top, all of this information, we'd like you to provide as much as is needed in order for us to uniquely identify the job. And it should match up with the other documents you submit with the job, like the proposal, the IJRT, those documents. Wouldn't necessarily have to put all of this information in here. We need enough so that if this gets misplaced somehow, we can track it down and fit it up with the right job, fit it up with the right job. That's close enough. Okay. What we do want you to fill out here is the analyst name. This is the BPI building analyst name and the analyst company. And now that may be the contractor doing the work, or it may be a third party. Whoever it is, we'd like to have the company in there. And then we need the BPI certification number. This is an absolutely required field at this point. Our back-end computer system will reject a job if the CAS measurements form or the test measurements form does not have a BPI number. So I would encourage you to make sure you put that in all the time. The notes and comments field right now, you can put anything you want in here. These items right here are editable. Okay, so you can delete those if you want. We put these in here as reminders of things we'd like you to put in here. On the next revision of this form, we'll go ahead and be doing dedicated fields for the gas leak notes, the outdoor temperature, and the ventilation requirements. But we wanted to get this form out into the field, and we didn't want to wait to get an update to this. So we put these notes in here just to remind you to put all this stuff in here. For the gas leak notes, you're expected to gas sniff every accessible gas line from the meter to the appliance. And here we'd like you to note any problems, any leaks, any things that you think you need to deal with. If you needed to call a gas service representative to fix a leak, we'd like to know about that. For the outdoor temperature, we'd like to know that so that when you get down here and talk about your combustion appliance zone testing, you give us a CAS limit here. I'm sorry, not a CAS limit, but down here when we're talking about draft, in order to correctly calculate the acceptable draft, we need to know the temperature. So that's a way for us to double check what you're doing there. And then ventilation required or recommended. We're actually working with two standards here. One is the BPI building airflow standards, which all of you BPI building analysts should know. And then the second one is ASHRAE 62.2, and that's a code requirement. Anytime a building is being worked on, it should comply with ASHRAE 62.2, whether it's new construction or existing construction, really. So what we'd like you to do is do your BPI thing and calculate the building airflow standard based on the building leakage. Determine whether BPI says you need to recommend ventilation or require ventilation. And then we'd also like you to do an ASHRAE 62.2 calculation as well and see if you're going to meet that requirement. And whichever one is more stringent, we'd like you to note that and do what's required. for whichever one of these standards is actually going to kick in the circumstances. Okay, so that's the top part of the form, pretty straightforward. Next, we get to the whole house testing portion of the form. First of all, we'd like you to know whether this is a test in or test out. We'd like to know the date that you're doing the testing. We'd like to know the building leakage in CFM 50. We'd also like you to go ahead and put the building leakage in air changes per hour, natural. This is a pretty simple calculation. You're required to do it for BPI, so we'd like you to go ahead and do that. It's not absolutely required at this point, but it may be at some point, so we would encourage you to get some practice and just start doing it. And if you have questions about how to do that, go ahead and send us an email, and we will go ahead and shoot back a response to you. In addition, actually, we're putting together an FAQ that goes along with this document. We'll go ahead and put that calculation in there, so there shouldn't be any question on how to do that. Next thing we'd like you to do is record a whole house ambient carbon monoxide measurement in parts per million. While you're doing your CAS testing, the whole time you're testing in the house, actually, you should be wearing a personal CO monitor. Now, the whole house ambient CO is basically going to a neutral portion of the house that's at least 10 feet away from any combustion appliance, standing still for about 10 seconds, and taking a reading there. This is part of the enhanced PG&E combustion testing guidelines that are not currently required, but they will be at some point in the not too distant future. So you might as well figure out how to do that and just go ahead and do that and record it here. Next, we'd like you to record your duct leakage in the CFM 25 amount, not the percentage. We'd like the CFM 25 number. And then we'd like to know here whether you used actual airflow or nominal airflow. We've discussed how to do that in the past. Here's just a quick refresher. If you're doing actual airflow, you need to measure the airflow of the system either using an airflow plate at the filter or at the air handler. Another option for getting actual airflow is to measure all of the supply outputs or all the return inputs. And there are a couple of other methods that most people just don't use, so we don't even talk about those. But those are the two, really. If you're not actually measuring the actual airflow, the other option is nominal airflow. And that's going to be either 400 CFM per ton or 0.0217 CFM per BTU output of the furnace. So whichever method you use for calculating your duct leakage, we'd like you to mention that. And then here, if you're using actual airflow, we'd like you to put the actual airflow here. So for instance, for actual airflow, let's say your CFM 25 is 200, and you did measure, say, some of the supply registers. We'd like you to put an actual, and then whatever you got here, let's say it's 12 or 1250. Okay, that's how you do actual airflow data recording. If you're doing nominal, we'd like you to put nominal in here, nothing in here, and your duct leakage in CFM 25 here. Now, when you take these numbers and you put these in your energy model, you're going to convert that to a percentage. That's what we need in the Energy Pro model. But here we just want the raw testing numbers, okay, just to make sure there's a difference there. Okay, that's the whole house tests. The next set of tests you're going to be doing are the CAS tests and the CAS tests. The CAS tests are the combustion appliance zone tests. So let's say, for instance, you've got combustion appliance zone in the garage. Okay, we're going to want to see for that, we're going to want to see your baseline. We're going to want to see your worst case depressurization, the net depressurization, which is the it's the difference between the two, the net difference between the two, and then the CAS limit for that kind of combustion zone. Now that's a BPI lookup. You can find that in your BPI standards that you should all be familiar with. And then once you get that, if your net depressurization exceeds the CAS limit, then you're going to have a fail. If it doesn't, then it's going to be a pass. So this is pretty straightforward. In addition to that, we're going to want to see an ambient CO reading for that zone. And again, that's similar to the whole house reading, but it is restricted to the zone, and it is under worst case conditions. All of these numbers right here are only under worst case conditions. Okay, we don't care about natural conditions. If you fail under worst case, you fail, and this is a PG&E requirement. BPI gives you a second option where you can or you can pass under natural conditions. That doesn't apply here. Okay, and then here we want to require an action of some kind. If it is a failure, it'd be nice if you could identify the cause of the failure and indicate that you're going to do something about that, or you're going to have someone do something about it, or have a professional call in to deal with it, something to just show us that it's fixed. The other thing we'd like to see is if there is a failure and a required action, we'd like to see that in your scope of work, however you're going to deal with that. And that may just be something as simple as you know, call a gas service representative and have PG&E look at it, or it may require calling in an HVAC specialist to deal with the flue or something like that. So your scope of work should, if there is a failure on your test in, the scope of work should deal with that somehow. We encourage you to do that. Okay. Now you can actually add multiple CAS zones. If you see here, I just added a second CAS zone. I'm going to take it away now. So you can add as many as you need. Now typically we'd like to see a CAS zone for any combustion appliance or collection of combustion appliances that are in the building shell in conditioned or unconditioned space. The ones that don't require CAS testing are those that are outside the building shell. It could be in a separate exterior closet, but it's got to be connected to the outside. Or it could be, let's say, a tankless water heater that's hanging off the side of the building. Those are really the only exceptions to a CAS zone. Everything else is going to have a CAS zone. Unconditioned attics with a furnace are a CAS zone, or might have a furnace and a hot water heater. That's a CAS zone. Unconditioned crawl spaces, also a CAS zone. So we'd like you to test everything that you can. So, and add as many zones as you need to and test each one individually. Now that's the CAS testing. Now for the CAS testing, combustion appliance safety testing, this is where you test each combustion appliance in the CAS zone under worst case conditions. First thing we'd like you to do is specify the equipment that you're dealing with. It's typically going to be heating or domestic hot water. We'd like you to do a flue inspection and tell us whether the flue passes or does not pass. And then we'd like you to do a combustion ventilation air calculation also and tell us whether it's adequate or inadequate. And then an ambient CO for that appliance. This is not currently required. It's part, again, of the PG&E extended combustion testing guidelines, which have not yet been adopted, but should be shortly. And this basically, each different type of combustion appliance has a different ambient CO test. We'd encourage you to download the CAS Action Guidelines checklist, which is, again, not required but will be soon, because it describes how to do the ambient CO test there. And there's also the Enhanced Combustion Guidelines testing document. You can find all of these things on the resource page on the BuildAGreenUtility.org website. Okay, so you identify the piece of equipment. You do these three inspections, the flue inspection, the CVA inspection, the ambient CO test, and then you do your, basically, if it's an open combustion appliance, you do your three tests. You do spillage, pass-fail, you do carbon monoxide parts per million, and this is air-free carbon monoxide. If it's in, you know, depending on the type of appliance, you get that measurement in different places or using different methods, and we're not going to go into that. That's a BPI question that you should all know if you're doing BPI testing. And then we do draft. Now for closed combustion appliances, you can't do spillage. We understand that. You can't do draft. We understand that. You may or may not be able to do carbon monoxide. It depends. If you can get outside the building and get to the flue termination easily, we would encourage you to do a carbon monoxide test as well. Whatever the case, if you can't do any of this testing, well, you certainly can do combustion ventilation air, and you should be able to do flue, and you know, it depends on the equipment. But we would like you to indicate whether it was a pass or a fail. If you did not test something for some reason, let's say you didn't do draft or spillage because it's a B vent and it's, or I'm sorry, so let's say draft and it's a B vent. We'd like you to go back up here to the notes and comments and say, okay, there is this equipment right here. The primary heating system is there. It exists. We did do a flue inspection and it passed. It passed. Combustion ventilation air, if it is a direct vent, you can't really do that because the combustion air comes from outside and the piping determines whether it's adequate. You can do an ambient CO, so we'd like that measurement right there. If you can't do spillage or draft or CO or anything here, we'd like you to put it up in the notes and tell us. Tell us there's a primary heating system, but then up here say primary heating system, we didn't test this stuff for this reason. As long as it's clear and it follows the BPI guidelines or the program guidelines with some of the enhanced testing, that's fine. If you don't tell us, we're probably going to say, okay, we have no idea what was going on here. As far as we can tell, you should have tested these things and you didn't, and we'll bounce the project back to you and reject it and say, okay, tell us what was happening there, because we don't know and we can't tell. So the more information you give us, the better. Some folks have commented that this comment field up here is small. It actually scrolls down, so you can actually add more information in here. You can see well, if I scroll, okay, you can see I'm actually adding just returns in here. So you can see you can add a lot. You can add as much here as you can fit in. I'm not sure there is even a limit on this. So the more details, the better. We want to hear your whole sad story about what's going on there with that house. Just like you can add CAS zones, you can also add appliances. So just by clicking on the button over here, it will add another piece of equipment within this CAS zone. So here we can see here's a CAS zone with 3 pieces of equipment. Here's a second CAS zone with 1 piece of equipment. Okay, now this is probably not going to be your typical situation, but you can see you can add as many CAS zones and as many pieces of equipment as you need to. So just keep that in mind. Just wanted to show you the form is flexible and you can do a lot with it. So that's basically an introduction to this form, the EUC Test Measurements Form version 1.0. We will also be posting a frequently asked questions document that goes along with this. When we did the live webinar for this document, we had a lot of questions. We had technical difficulties with that recording, so instead of doing a live webinar recording of all the questions and answers, we're just going to put an FAQ together so you can download that. Look for that in addition to this. If you have questions that aren't covered by this webinar and by the FAQ, send us an email to jobs@builditgreenutility.org. And we also have our toll-free 866 number also, which I don't know off the top of my head, but it is. You can also find that, I believe, you can find it here on our, you can find it somewhere here, okay? So I would say go take a look on this website. It is here somewhere. And you'll find this form in the FAQ down in this portions of the website. That's it for this webinar. Thank you very much. I hope you found it informative and helpful. But like I said, if you have questions, contact us. Thank you.